Alright folks, the time has come to talk about Redstone and how it works with rail systems. So to start off, I just want to talk about something we mentioned very early on in this series, how to use Redstone to activate a rail switch. So I've got a bent rail here, and it's bent off in this direction by default, but if I give it Redstone power, it switches the direction of that bent rail and goes off onto this track. Just so you're aware though, it'll only behave like that if you have another piece of rail over here. So if I try to supply redstone power here, it's not going to move. And that's all you need to remember. Next thing we want to talk about are powered rails. Powered rails actually respond to redstone signal and will provide a speed boost to any minecarts that are traveling along the rail. So right now I've got a couple powered rails sitting on the track. They're unpowered at the moment, but I'm going to fire them up. And then I'm going to give this minecart a little boost. And there it goes. It gets a speed boost from those rails and starts moving along. And this will never stop moving, since these are constantly powered. Something I want to point out about powered rails, and this applies to not only powered rails, but detector rails and activator rails, is they cannot be used to create a turn within the rail system. So if you ever need to change the rail direction, you will always have to use a regular rail. A note about how to power multiple powered rails is that they can actually transmit redstone power from the original track that's being powered across several other powered rails. The max distance it will actually go is 8 blocks in either direction from the original power source. So I could go off in that direction, but I'm just showing one right now. So I've got this redstone torch underneath this block, powering that rail, and then it's supplying power to its connected powered rails all the way out to 8 blocks. Another cool behavior of powered rails is that if you have a minecart of any type sitting on an unpowered rail, and the direction of motion is restricted on one side, and then you supply it power, the minecart will start moving off in the direction that it can move. And it just so happens that you can use this behavior to create a nice little launching pad for when you want to travel along the minecart yourself. So you hop in the minecart, go ahead and push the button, and it kicks you on your way. So next we want to talk about detector rails. Detector rails are actually another type of redstone power source, but they only activate when a minecart of any type is rolling on top of them. So you can see I stand on the rail, it does nothing. So it only activates when you have a minecart going on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this minecart a little nudge, and there it goes. So what's happening here is the detector rail is activating and then supplying power to the powered rail that's behind it. Now you notice I only put these in a specific configuration. I put the detector rail here and the powered rail there. Now, as it turns out, if I try to push this cart in the opposite direction, the rails do not activate because it never hits the detector rail first, and therefore the powered rails remain unpowered and stops the motion of the minecart. This can actually be useful in some applications because it actually limits the direction of motion to one specific direction. Now, detector rails and powered rails can look really pretty. They mean you just have to build your track and that's it. But they are kind of expensive in materials. You know, it requires gold and redstone to craft the powered rails. So if you don't have a whole lot of gold, there is an alternative for reliable power sources, and it actually only uses, this whole system here only uses iron, wood planks, cobblestone, and coal. So what I've got right here is a minecart with a furnace in it, and if I have nothing in my hand and I go and I click this minecart with the furnace, it actually kind of slowly chugs along and doesn't really go very far. But if I just so happen to take one piece of coal or charcoal, I actually have charcoal in my hand right now, and I just click once, I'm going to right click, that furnace cart is going to go on its own and push any carts ahead of it along its way. And it'll actually go for quite a long time with just one piece of coal. So this is definitely a valuable alternative that uses very low-cost materials to keep minecarts moving. Alright, before I move on to the last bit that I want to talk about, which are activator rails, I've got one right down here, I want to briefly mention the thing that I'm about to skip over, which are minecarts with hoppers in them. And to be honest, minecarts with hoppers in them, they're pretty simple and pretty straightforward. They behave in much the same way that a minecart with a player inside of it would act. As they move along, they use that hopper ability to pick up nearby items that are near the track or above the track, and they pull them into the hopper so they can move along with it. So this can actually be a great way to clear up items that are near and around the rail itself. So with that said, let's move on to the activator rail. Right now I've got an activator rail right here. You'll notice I actually don't have a texture for it. But anyways, activator rails actually require redstone signal in order to be used. So real quick, I'm going to demonstrate that. I'm going to get my minecart with TNT moving along here. And then I'm going to send it down to the activator rail that's unpowered. And you'll notice it does absolutely nothing. It's sort of a anticlimactic moment. Okay, so this time around, the activator rail is going to be powered by redstone, and we're going to get much different behavior out of the minecart with the TNT. Obviously, we're expecting an explosion, but I want you to watch what happens to the rail itself as the minecart is triggered. So you notice we did not see complete destruction of our rail. And the rule is that the activator rail actually allows protection of the blocks that it's placed on and the rails that are connected to it. So that block of TNT would have never destroyed the rail itself. And that's nice because that means we can keep this thing powered. We usually would, you'll notice that the lever actually got blown off. So it wasn't protected. So probably the best way to supply power to the activator rails is to use detector rails because they will be protected. At any rate, this means you can send more minecarts with TNT down the rail, have them get triggered by the activator rail, and explode, clearing out more space. And now I just wanted to mention one last thing. This is actually an addendum to something I mentioned in a previous video when I talked about the comparator blocks. I made mention that using detector rails with comparator blocks to detect the contents of a minecart in a chest, or the chest in a minecart, meant that you couldn't hide the redstone circuits, and I was wrong. It turns out that when you push a minecart with a chest that has contents in it over a detector rail, the signal is sent to the block adjacent to it, and the comparator block will read the signal of the detector rail, which subsequently is actually allowing you to read the contents of the chest. It really doesn't seem like it's possible, but yes, it is possible. The fullness of this minecart is actually being read by this comparator block right here. And it's receiving that signal through this block here, through the detector block, and subsequently into the chest itself. Alright folks, that about does it for minecarts. There's definitely a few more things that can go into this Redstone Basics series, but I think very shortly we're going to start getting into some of the application videos, and I think that's going to be a lot more beneficial because there are a lot of cool things that I've got to show. I will admit that most of the things that I've built are generally modified versions of things that other people have done. But I have a few original ideas that I'm really excited to kind of show off. But even my modified versions should have some cool things there. I will point out, though, that as much as I love Redstone, I do like to keep it hidden. I think it's just an aesthetic choice. So if you're like me and you kind of like to use Redstone, but you like to keep it away from sight and make it seem like magic, then hopefully I've got some cool tricks to show you. And with that, we'll end this entry in the series, and I'll catch you next time.